this issue of psychedelic safety, I want to turn to what I think is one of the biggest dangers and perhaps most overlooked dangers. I've talked about many of the problems that have occurred for me personally, that I've observed occurring, that I've read about and can understand as the costs or negatives of taking a psychedelic. And I'm particularly referring to the shamanic use, the expanded consciousness aspect in a setting that is conducive to insight, to healing, to integration. But the biggest risk of all is not to explore psychedelics in any way. And I want to talk about that risk. And I want to draw a couple of parallels. Investing in the stock market over the last 100 years has seen, I believe it's in the arena of 100 times return on investment after compounded interest is factored in. And during the last 100 years, there have been 2 depressions. There have been periods of volatility. We have gone on and off the gold standard in the United States, and a whole host of factors, 2 world wars, have come and gone. The First World War now just a little bit out of that 100-year range. But there has been nothing but shock, scandal, surprise, corruption, etc., etc. And yet, someone buying into the general index of the market at a compounding rate, with all of that going on, has so much more money than the person who used any one of all of those many reasons not to invest. That the riskiest thing of all, by far, is the truth, is the statement that keeps someone out of the market. And in that context, by all means, diversify. By all means, reduce the cost per transaction. By all means, get an IRA. By all means, investigate the companies you invest in. By all means, prepare for a downturn. By all means, understand and take action to minimize all of the myriad risks related to investing. But understand that the biggest risk is not to invest at all. Every single person who doesn't invest comes out much poorer than the person who invests, maybe at the wrong time, over an extended period of time. Another example is relationships. There are 100 reasons not to be in a relationship. There are red flags. There is abuse. There is dissatisfaction. There is unfairness. There is betrayal. There is 100 different reasons not to be in a relationship. And yet the biggest risk of all for a lifetime is to go to our death, never knowing what love is, never experiencing the rich beauty and dimensionality and the potential altered states that are possible through sexuality, never knowing what it is to love and be loved deeply in the full range of expression. Because that is a vastly diminished life. There are risks to entering any relationship, but the biggest risk is not to be in relationship at all. And as we turn to psychedelics, the risks of insanity, the risks of disintegration, the risk of releasing too much trauma too quickly, the risks of misreading and thus putting too much emphasis on one aspect of the truth relative to the other, i.e., but I love him so much. Yes, and he's married, and you live halfway across the world, etc., etc., etc. Putting too much emphasis on one face of the truth is a very real risk in psychedelics. When the truth presents itself in certain dimensions so vividly, it is a profound risk. And yet, as Terence McKenna says, to go to the grave without ever opening the door on consciousness expanding substances that have participated in the evolution of culture, of religion, of expanded states for thousands of years. To never experience the partnership that is possible with certain hallucinogenic plants, ever, and even know what that is like dying without ever experiencing sex. To people who have experienced love, death, sex, and psychedelics, they consider them on a par with one another. And to not know what one doesn't know. To say, that sex stuff seems a bit messy. I saw so-and-so get hurt. So-and-so got a disease. And it's not for me. No sex for me. I'm just going to pass that troublemaker by for the lifetime. You can do it. And you can have cogent reasons for doing so. But to call it a rich, a dimensional, a meaningful life without ever experiencing sex, without ever investing in the markets, without ever being deeply in love, without ever expanding one's consciousness to the limits that our brains are capable of while still being in this body, is to die with a vastly limited range of human experience. There's an interesting statistic in the United States around the epidemic of loneliness. And I'm not surprised at the epidemic of loneliness, because having explored dating with women in the United States. There is a 90% ignoring rate. 90% of the women I reach out to simply ignore the invitation. Of those that remain, there is often a prove it to me attitude. I write half a page, a few paragraphs, engage, and they write a single line question, kind of like, prove it to me that you're worth it. I'm not interested in proving over email. The risk assessment in these exchanges seems to be very much one of, I heard what's happened to so-and-so, this person got hurt, so-and-so's cheating on, I'm not sure relationships are for me. And yet, people in relationships live longer, have better health, are less affected by a number of different diseases, including heart disease. And as the epidemic of loneliness doubles in the United States over the last 20 years and is on the rise, these are concrete statistics that say that you alone, with your TV and your safety filters, are shortening your life every single day. So while the risks seem more graphic, so-and-so was raped, so-and-so was cheated, so-and-so had an uncomfortable situation, I went on a date and it was awkward. The biggest threat of all is that by overblowing these threats statistically and staying isolated, one is guaranteeing a steady rhythm of reduced health, of reduced growth, of a shorter life. There are many risks in psychedelic statistics, many of them caused by the lack of science and the lack of legality. Not to mention the draconian and traumatizing treatment by our own government around exploring this human right of consciousness. And yet, with all those risks in play, the greatest risk of all is not to give oneself the opportunity to wake up, to lift through the fog and remember, to reorganize and reintegrate a pattern that says, this is the me that is outside of this cult of culture. This is the me that is outside of this relationship. This is the me that is me beyond my role at work. This is who I am. And to have that true north bearing and look at all the various choices in life through that lens and gain a sense of which things are way off base, which things are a little bit off base, and to reestablish that link to true north. This is an experience that many, in their first few psychedelic experiences, have had for thousands of years. It is a shaman's greatest tool. And if some of the histories and speculations of People such as Terence McKenna, Gordon Wasson, and other anthropologists are to be believed. Mushrooms, peyote, ayahuasca may have played a far more significant role in the development of language and culture, not to mention the birth of many religions, than we are currently led to believe. At a time of deep materialism, at a time of exhaustion, both in our planetary ecology, in our sense of spirituality, in our sense of meaning and direction, the awareness that many of us are just a few sacred hours away from an experience that transcends everything that we've known, that illuminates things we don't know we don't know, makes it a far riskier proposition as a species to run away from this doorway than to prepare gracefully, to honor the potential of the process with a sacred preparation container, a good month set aside to honor what could be a path to a whole new life. This is a profound gift. It is a gift given to us by the grace of plants, by the grace of partnering chemistry, where DMT, psilocybin, LSD, it's almost as if the brain has been designed to partner with these plants. And if history in ethnobotany is to be believed, we have been partnering with these plants for a long time. So I want to encourage you to listen and show respect for yourself, for the cultural fears and taboos around you, the environment, to listen to every single one of the videos and things about what can go wrong, to learn from others. There's hundreds of hours of material on YouTube. But at the end of the day, to consider that not to go into that room, not to step through the antechamber and enter the temple of our consciousness and our own mind at all, risks a life that could be 1/10 of its potential when we are able to see who we are in all of our light and darkness for a few transformational hours outside of all of the veils and all of the masks and all of the many roles that we have been asked to shoulder, to stand behind, and to wear. And those few hours can change the way we see the world, the way we see ourselves, the gifts we are able to contribute, our meaning, our value, in ways that will not happen any other way. And that rather than seeing these gifts as a weakness. Imagine the absurdity of a fanatic saying, I don't need air. I don't need food. I don't need water. I'm going to do it by myself. I'm going to do it the hard way. I'm going to hold my breath and I'm going to use sheer willpower to get there on my own because I don't need anything. I don't want to take a shortcut. I don't want to take a crutch. They'd be dead in 3 minutes. They'd be dead in a few hours. They'd be dead in a few days. I think it takes true maturity and true strength to accept and understand that what we consider us as individuals is far more interconnected with the ecologies in which we exist, socially, culturally, physically, financially. That if you take away the air, you take away the water, you take away the money, you take away the education, you take away the language, you take away books, you take away something, that some part of us stops existing. And that when you add something, when you bring in a new variable, when you honor a new relationship, a relationship with a plant, a relationship with a chemical, that something new is born. And the real question is, does it support us in being the people we want to be? Does it support us in co-creating the world we want to live in? And as psychedelics, the ones I've been talking about, are not addictive, show no harmful effects on the body, and take but a few hours, and since the worlds that they reveal cannot be put fully into language and are experiential by nature, the real question is, will you stand in a locked room and talk authoritatively about faraway places you have never been? Japan, Asia, India. Or will you get on a plane, get on a boat, go out there, taste the food you're sure you will or will not like, and discover for yourself because that is the opportunity that a plant offers you. And you don't have to consume 1,000 gallons of jet fuel. You don't have to stand in line. You don't have to get a passport. You don't have to take a week, a month. It doesn't cost thousands of dollars. It's a few hours away. And if we grow the plants ourselves, it is nature's gift. There's no charge, just the choice and the willingness to receive. I had done $130,000 worth of therapy I'd taken more than 100 workshops. I'd spent time in a variety of alternative communities. I'd worked with crystals. I'd done energy work. I'd done several thousand hours of meditation in a variety of disciplines. I'd explored the energetics of relationship and sexuality. I'd written more than 10 books on psychology and relationship dynamics. I'd played with diet, with routine, with rhythm, with art and expression. And in the first 2.5 hours of taking a low dose of 60 milligrams of MDMA, I learned things that I had not learned anywhere else. I saw things I had not seen anywhere else. And I reconnected with parts of me that had been dissociated since early childhood. The cost of that substance was $20. And it reinvigorated therapy, etc., etc. In my experience, there's no shortcut to the opportunity to partner with a plant. There's no shortcut. You can't sweep at the ashram for 10 years and get where you'll go in 2.5 hours in a partnership with a plant. It's a synergy. Not just you, not just the plant, not just all the work you've done, but all the work you've done, the gift of a plant, and who you are, opening up a door that will not be opened any other way. The greatest risk is never opening the door. But it's a significant enough door to take the time to respect it and respect yourself, to go through honorably. To go through honorably. And to welcome the blessings that come through that door.